Did you know that we're not supposed to be forced to pay property taxes? Stick with me as I break this down. Now, before I break this down, I will warn you that this is going to be a lengthy video, so you might want to take some notes. First, in order to properly explain why we should be paying property taxes, it's imperative that we learn the two different and fundamentally opposing systems of land ownership. One system being allodial and another system being feudal. And to accomplish this, we're going to be reading from multiple law dictionaries. Book reference. Allodial, free, not holding of any lord or superior, owned without obligation of vassalage or fealty, the opposite of feudal. Allodium, land held absolutely in one's own right, and not of any lord or superior, land not subject to feudal duties or burdens. An estate held by absolute ownership without recognizing any superior to whom any duty is due on account thereof. Spoiler alert, this is the system that we're supposed to be under. This is what was founded or was adopted after the Revolutionary War. Now, let's go look up feudal. Feudal, pertaining to feuds or fees, relating to or growing out of the feudal system or feudal law, having the quality of a feud as distinguished from allodial. So we see that feudal is opposite of allodial, and we learn that allodial is free without any superior or lord. Feud and feudal law is an estate and land held of a superior on condition of rendering him services. So when I'm reading about feuds or feudal law, think landlord and tenant. So the tenant has to what? Pay the landlord or render services to the landlord in order to stay at the property. An inheritable right to the use and occupation of lands held on condition of rendering services to the lord, landlord, or proprietor, whom himself retains the property in the lands. I.e., you don't own the land. You're just renting it out or using it for a certain period of time, but you have no ownership interest in the land. Feudal law, the body of jurisprudence relating to feuds, the real property law of the feudal system, the law anciently regulating the property relations of lords and vassals, aka landlord and tenants, and the creation of incidents and transmissions of feudal estates. And here we have expert commentary that reads, survivals of the feudal law to the present day so affect and color that branch of jurisprudence as to require a certain knowledge of the feudal law in order to the perfect comprehension of modern tenures and rules of real property law. It formed the entire basis of the real property law of England in medieval times, and survivals of the system in modern days so modify and color that branch of jurisprudence both in England and America, that many of its principles require for their complete understanding a knowledge of the feudal system. The feudal system originated in the relations of a military chieftain and his followers, or kings and nobles, or lords and vassals, and especially their relations as determined by the bond established by a grant of land for the former to the latter. So that establishes the two different types of systems in which someone can own land. Allodial, meaning you have the superior status and there's no one above you and you don't have to pay rent to anybody. And then there's feudal, which means you're in the subordinate status. Now, let's talk about the history and why we're supposed to be under allodial tenures opposed to feudal tenures. First, let's look up sovereignty because this will all make sense in a little bit. Sovereignty is a supreme, absolute, and uncontrollable power by which any independent state is governed. It's the supreme political authority, paramount control of the Constitution and frame of government and its administration, the self-sufficient source of political power from which all specific political powers are derived. The international independence of a state combined with the right and power of regulating its internal affairs without foreign dictation. Now, let's define what a sovereign is. A sovereign is a person, body, or state in which independent and supreme authority is vested. A chief ruler with supreme power, a king or other ruler with limited power. There, let's go to the United States Supreme Court of Shoemaker versus United States. As to the character of tenure of the land in this country since the Revolution, it has been said that it has become allodial. So remember, all the land in all the states are supposed to be allodial since the Revolution. From this old article that I found. Here, almost all our states are held by allodial titles, improperly called estates in fee simple, and every man feels secure that whatever improvements he makes in agricultural pursuits are for his own benefit and that of his posterity. Here, he is not borne down by the weight of taxes, property taxes, which consume the principal portion of the income from his labor to pay. Here, he has no griping landlord to dread, nor fears of a raising of his rents, or of being rejected or ejected from his farm and losing the benefits of his labor and improvements. And another one I found was from this article called English Tenure. Judge Sutherland's able lecture at the university yesterday. The subject of tenure is a wide one, and the changes made in it from time to time illustrate the flexibility of the common law. In our country, the title to land is called an allodial title. That is a title without vassalage, one in which the holder of the title owes no duty to any superior as a consideration for that title. I'm going to skip to here. All titles regulated by the usage of the feudal system, in which complete ownership of real estate vested only in the king, and in England today, all titles are held from the king. The property itself was called a tenement, the possession a tenant. So you can begin to see now that today the state is acting as the king, which is acting as the superior of us, which is totally incorrect. And let's go back to sovereignty. Because remember, a sovereign is a person, body, or state in which independent and supreme authority is vested. And in a republican government, one in which the powers of sovereignty are vested in the people and are exercised by the people, either directly or through chosen representatives, to whom those powers are specially delegated. So the people are the sovereigns in a republican form of government, but let's see why that happened. Book reference. Sovereignty case law. When the revolution took place, the people of each state became themselves sovereign, and in that character hold the absolute right to all their navigable waters and the soils under them, for their own common use, subject only to the rights since surrendered by the Constitution to the general government. The people of every sovereign state possess all the rights and powers of government. The people of the state, as the successors of its former sovereign, aka the King of England, are entitled to all the rights which formerly belonged to the king by his prerogative. Through the medium of their legislature, they may exercise all the powers which previous to the revolution could have been exercised either by the king alone or by him in conjunction with his parliament, subject only to those restrictions which have been imposed by the Constitution of this state or of the United States. And to keep piling on, strictly speaking, in our republican form of government, the absolute sovereignty of the nation is in the people of the nation. So since the people are the sovereigns under the republican form of government, they are the ones who are supposed to hold allodial title to the land. Now, this all changed in 1913 with the enactment of the Federal Reserve Act and bringing in a central bank. This is when they started converting allodial titles over to mortgages and deeds, which are all feudal in nature. Now, there are currently 3 states' constitution that bluntly states that all allodial titles are with the people. You have the Arkansas Constitution, which states this: tenure of land. All lands in this state are declared to be allodial, and feudal tenures of every description with all their incidents are prohibited. So why are there property taxes there? You have the Wisconsin Constitution, feudal tenure. All lands within the state are declared to be allodial, and feudal tenures are prohibited. And this is from the Minnesota Constitution. Lands allodial. All lands within the state are allodial, and feudal tenures of every description with all their incidents are prohibited. Now, using the full faith and credit clause of the Constitution in Article 4, this shall apply everywhere. And in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, the United States shall guarantee to each state a republican form of government. And in a republican form of government, the powers of sovereignty are vested in the people. Now, since everything in the public operates under commerce, they strategically reclassify everything into a commercial nature. For instance, book reference. The word residence is the primary example. Most people think and give this definition whenever they hear the word residence: the act or fact of living in a given place for some time. But here's what it also means in a commercial sense: the place where a corporation or other enterprise does business or is registered to do business. So if I look up a property address on my county assessor website, it's going to list it as residential, or this property specifically is residential. So the account type is residential, and look, this word right here, situs, is also very important. And here's why. Book reference. Situs or situs. Situation, location, example given, location, or place of a crime or business. The place where a thing is considered, for example, with reference to jurisdiction over it or the right or power to tax it. Situs of property for tax purposes is determined by whether the taxing state has sufficient contact with the personal property sought to be taxed to justify in fairness the particular tax. And since I only have 10 minutes, to sum it up, all this is this: conversion, an unauthorized assumption and exercise of the right of ownership over goods or personal chattels belonging to another, to the alteration of their condition, status, or the exclusion of the owner's rights. And through their means of conversion, they list the owner name in all capital letters, which signifies a business. That business is assumed to be a creature of the state, which means it is taxable by the state. All this is a conversion of your inalienable right to property into commercial activity. Under an allodial type form of government, but since 1913 through 1933, we have switched over to a feudal type system. And this is why we're forced to pay property taxes. So if you learned something, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments and share this out. Peace.